appropriating concepts and calling them something and claiming that they belong to the European experience. And by the same token, this is what they've done, of course, with the word philosophy. And Obenga, in his major work, of course, has dealt with that question of philosophy. He's even pointed out that the word philosophy is not even a Greek word when you really get to it. That philo and sophia don't even have an origin in any Indo-European language. That they go back to Seba in the ancient Medu-Neter. So when you start looking at that, you have to raise questions, as Ed Scobe said, about everything. You gotta, every time you read a line, you have to say, well, that may not be true, or that probably isn't true. And then you write a note in the margin. That's what I do. You read the books that I read, I have all kinds of notes in the margins. All right. I just question it all. I mean, it's just amazing what they do. You can't believe it. And so what happens is that Africa becomes not a continent with culture and civilization and organized societies. It becomes a set of references. And they say, well, it's wild, it's untamed, it's savage, it's primitive, and exotic, and so on. These are a set of references in the European imagination. And if you really examine this whole question of the fabrication of Africa, you see not only the fabrication of Africa in a continental sense, but the fabrication of people from Africa. So that this is why I always say that I've traveled to Africa 18 times. I've never yet met a Negro. But they fabricated Negroes. You have people who still say they're Negroes. In fact, I just heard the other day that Russell Adams at Howard University still claims to be a Negro. So, you know, one of the things that happened, and somebody told me this, I didn't know you ever get to this point, that when you get old enough, you can just call names and say what you want to say. I like that. It's because it keeps people honest. Because the only thing is that when you call names, you keep, the other day, Russell Adams was quoted in the Washington Post as saying that Molefi Asante believes that Afrocentricity should replace everything that is European and American society. To him, it is a religion. Well, that's nonsense. But what happens is that those kinds of comments are picked up by people who run around and say, well, you see, Molefi Asante is just like Lynn Jeffries. And they go around and they say, you got Molefi Asante out here saying the same thing as Asa Hilliard and all these crazy people, and they put me, so when I see Asa and Lynn coming, I go in the opposite direction. But I come back because I know we on the right track. We on the right road. But that's but you have a lot of Negroes who have taken on the task of trying to explain to white people what Louis Lomax used to call years ago, he called it, they're fooling white people. They're trying to say to white people, they ain't saying what you think they're saying. They're saying something else. And this is really what they're saying. And so what is happening is that there's a transformation happening in American society in terms of education, in terms of knowledge. I mean, Barbara Sizemore has been saying it for years, and now all of a sudden, what's happened is that everything is coming together in the minds of everybody. I was in a taxi today in Atlanta, and the taxi cab driver had Ben Yuckinen's works, and they came before Columbus in his taxi up there so everybody could see it. I mean, this is what's happening. The transformation is happening. Everybody has it. And you see, the major idea in the European experience is the superiority of its culture and its identity. And last night I was speaking in New Jersey, and a nun said to me, she said, well, we have a lot of sisters here who at this college who have gone over to Africa, and we have worked trying to raise the standards of the African people. So I said to her, what gives you the reason, sister, to assume that you're raising their standards? And she sort of said, well, the thing is that there are certain kinds of things they don't have. I said, but sister, in most instances, if you're talking about ethics and morality, if you're talking about intellect, they are superior to us over here on this side. I sort of said it like that. She says, I think that the work that the sisters are doing is good. I said, yeah, but the point is that you are making an assumption that somehow there is something in the experience that you have that causes you to go to Africa and you're going to raise the standards of people. You see, that's a superiority complex, and it goes everywhere in the West. It is a Western notion. It's a European notion. No other people in the world have that notion. It is a Western idea, and this is part of what the Dr. Scobe was referring to. Everywhere you go, everything they touch, the whole idea in their minds is that somehow the technical material values of the European experience is somehow the criterion for being civilized. In fact, we know that ain't true.
All right.
Not when you can drop bombs on a country, kill 150,000 people, and act like you just had a good meal. That's insane. It's not a part of African culture or experience that I know anything about. And I think that this notion, actually, this whole superiority notion is a locational superiority position. It's a position where they try to put themselves in a position where whatever happens, regardless, even from the time of Homer, whatever happens, they're in a position of control. And Dr. Cato at Temple has called this hegemonic, and Gramsci has also talked about this, but Cato's work about the hegemonic idea, this whole notion of European hegemony, is a very powerful concept, because anywhere they are, in any experience, it's the same thing Garvey realized when he traveled to Central America and South America. He says, everywhere I go, white folk are trying to dominate black folk. He said, no, that's strange. I mean, if you're in one society, you can say, okay, well, maybe this is this is an unusual situation. They don't act like this everywhere. But when you go to every society, everywhere you are, and the European is attempting to dominate the African, then you have to raise a significant question. What is in their behavior that causes them to have to feel the need to assert domination over the African? And when you ask that question, you began to see that knowledge acquisition in the West has always been a political idea. In fact, and it's a very interesting thing, because what they do, they tell you, say, well, true knowledge is not supposed to be political. So when you start writing something, particularly you see when people who are in positions where they have been oppressed begin to write something, they say, well, that's political. Afrocentricity is a political idea. You can't, we're looking for true, objective, theoretical information. This is a political idea. And the reason we're often placed in that kind of position is that what happens is the European sees the possibility of the African getting off of the mental plantation. See, if you get off the mental plantation, then a whole lot of things happen. It can be translated into economic terms. What do you think will happen if this movement succeeds to change the curricula of the major school districts in America? You're talking economics. You're talking you're talking the rewriting of textbooks. You're talking the redistribution of money, maybe from one place to another. You're talking a whole lot of stuff. That's a political talk. And when you're talking about information and knowledge and truth, as we're talking about it, they see it in political terms because they're looking at what will happen if this is allowed to happen. Well, it's going to happen anyway. Look at this. Always, the whole notion of objective knowledge favors the status quo. And it is necessary, as Donna Marimba Richards has always taught us, it is necessary to question the whole notion of Western objectivity, because it ain't objective. It does not exist in that form. And the other day, Ann Wortham, speaking before the Heritage Foundation on Afrocentrism and education. She's one of the new up-and-coming Shelby Steele types. Well, she's been out there for about 10 years now, but she's a graduate of Tuskegee. She is. But she was on saying she was a colored American. She was not African or black or anything. She was colored. But at any rate, one of the things